Last week, the Brazilian government decided just to outright ban X in the country, to strip Brazilians of their rights to communicate on one of the most popular social media platforms. Now, this is all because a Brazilian Supreme Court judge, Alexandre de Moraes, has some sort of vendetta against Elon Musk and against free speech, it appears. But even worse, Brazil seems to be headed down the dark path towards authoritarianism under President Lula and this Supreme Court judge, Alexandre de Moraes. Well, to help us break down what's going on in Brazil, we are joined by Mariano Pérez, Argentinian political journalist and the creator of Breakpoint News channel. Mariano, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Harrison. It's a pleasure to be with you in your program.
So, a lot of Canadians have been following the news in Brazil, seeing the country decide to ban X and the implications of that. But there's more to the story, I believe, and for those who aren't as familiar with the story, can you summarize for our audience what is going on in Brazil right now?
Well, in Brazil, what is happening is a dictatorship because Alexandre de Moraes, that is a judge from the Supreme Court, he uses his power to make politics. He wants to get Bolsonaro in jail, and he attacks all the free speech in the social networks, not only on X. X is the biggest example of that, but I was in Brazil 2 months ago in the CPAC. I talked with all of influencers in Brazil, and they said me that happens in all the social networks. But the difference in this situation is that Elon Musk said, I don't want to ban people because you don't like what they post. What happens is that Alexandre Moraes attacks the people that support Bolsonaro or that don't like his run as a Supreme Court judge, and they demand them or the social medias to get banned. So, he said, I don't know, YouTube. I don't like what Harrison is doing in YouTube. He demands YouTube, and YouTube said, well, I ban him or I have a problem with the Supreme Court. Well, they banned the influencers. What happened now is that Elon Musk didn't want to ban the influencers that Alexandre Moraes want to ban, and we have the old X band in Brazil. They have millions and millions and millions of people that doesn't talk about politics, and they get banned too because they don't want the people to talk about politics and criticize them.
So, who is this Supreme Court judge, Alexandre de Moraes? I mean, why does he have so much power in Brazil? He's not the president. It doesn't seem like he was elected by anybody. So who is this guy, and why does he have so much power?
Well, he, as I said, he's running as a dictator. He is the real power in Brazil. He manages the Supreme Court. The Monday in Brazil, they want to start an impeachment on Alexandre de Moraes. We'll see how it goes, but he is the real power in Brazil. He manages Lula. All the people in Brazil that I talk tell me that. He is the real power in Brazil. He is who controls everything. He uses his power to make politics, to make decisions about politics, and he wants to get in jail Bolsonaro, get in jail a lot of people in the opposition, and he's running like a dictator in Brazil because the Supreme Court has a lot of power and is really hard to control them.
Wow. And how have Brazilians reacted to this significant and sudden change in their country? Losing access to X is crazy. So how have Brazilians reacted?
Well, today, right now, is a big and massive mobilization of people in Sao Paulo. There is Bolsonaro, there is the governors, there is millions of people in the street because they know what is this. This is not only ban a social network. This is not only ban X. They want to control Brazil, and they want to turn Brazil into Venezuela, into Cuba. That's the way. That's how he starts, right? It's what we are seeing now in Venezuela is the same thing. They want to ban everything that is not controlled by them, and that's how the dictatorships run. And the people in Brazil knows that this is only the beginning. So if them don't stop them right now, it could be too late.
So it sounds like Lula, the Brazilian president, who we know is a close friend and ally with Iran and China. It
Yes.
sounds like Lula is trying to bring that kind of politics, that authoritarianism into Brazil. Is that what's happening?
Yes, that was happening, and this situation with Alexandre de Moraes doing this because he is the real power and he controls a lot of things that Lula did. And we have to know that Lula's friends are Maduro, are Cuba, are Iran, in Argentina, the Kirchnerism, and all these people, all these left wings people that the only thing that they want is the total control of the people and the state and all the decisions that we have. So that's what they want to do in Brazil, and it's a really big country. This 200 million people. This is really a situation really complicated.
And what will happen to South American politics if Brazil becomes the next Venezuela, if Brazil goes the way of Venezuela and Cuba? I'm sure that's going to significantly change the continent.
They have a lot of influence, of course. They are the biggest country in the region, but I think I am lucky because I am in Argentina. We were really close to get on that because last year the other candidate, Sergio Massa, the left-wing candidate that lost with Javier Milei, want to do this. He has a law preparing that control the social network speech. I get banned in YouTube last presidential debate. It was Sergio Massa versus Javier Milei, and me and another right-wing influencers. We were streaming the debate, and we were banned by the electoral committee. It was a really a terrifying situation, and we were so close to get like Brazil, but I think we are in Argentina really lucky about having Javier Milei, and it's fun that the traditional media, they are crying a lot with Javier Milei because he cut off all the money from the government to the traditional media, and they are crying about that, and they say that that is cutting free speech, but they don't say nothing about Brazil, about Lula, because they like it, because they are all woke in the traditional media, because they like that kind of people. But they cry a lot because Javier Milei gives a retweet or like to me or other people in the social networks that criticizing the traditional media. There is a really fun situation in Argentina because it had no sense.
So explain to our audience then relations between Argentina and Brazil, between Javier Milei and Lula. I imagine that they're not very good.
Well, the relation, they are two different things. The relation between Milei and Lula and Brazil and Argentina. Brazil and Argentina needs to have a good relationship in diplomatics, but that's not the way that we have Milei or Lula. There is the diplomatics, and there is Milei and Lula. Milei says that Lula is a criminal, he's a communist, he's a disaster to Brazil. He went to Brazil 2 months ago when I went to the CPAC, and he wore to see Bolsonaro, no Lula. He wore that to criticize Lula, to say that he's a thief, that this is a communist, and this is a not good relationship between them. But the diplomatics in between Brazil and Argentina have to stay calm, whatever is the president, because there is a two neighbor countries. We have a lot of commerce between Argentina and Brazil, so there is the two situations, but your interest is between Milei and Lula, and it's not a good relationship.
Right, I can imagine. Now, how are other South American countries reacting to what is going on in Brazil? Other than Argentina, how are other countries reacting in the region, reacting to Brazil? Are they coming together, or are certain countries moving further away from Brazil as the country becomes more authoritarian?
Mhm. Well, it depends the country. I don't know. Colombia with Petro is a friend of Lula. Venezuela with Maduro is a friend of Lula. There is a lot of countries in the region that they are in with a socialist or communist presidents, so they of course support Lula and want to do that in their countries. Maduro wants to ban X in Venezuela. He wants to ban WhatsApp. He wants to ban a lot of social networks because in Venezuela or in that countries the traditional media does not inform the people. They there were massive mobilizations in Venezuela, and the TV in Venezuela was showing shows or movies or another things. They don't cover that. The only people that covered that situations were in the social networks. So they want to ban that because it's his chance to control what he's saying in all the states.
And we read the news recently that Javier Milei called on the International Criminal Court to arrest Maduro. It would something like this, would Milei say something like this about Moraes potentially in Brazil?
I don't know what is going to do Milei with Alexandre de Moraes situation because he doesn't like to interfere in another country's situation because in Argentina we have a lot of problems. Thing with Maduro is it was different because he stole elections, he killed people, he prisoned people. But I think that in the future, if Brazil turns on that, of course they are going to take cards in this situation. But I don't know what's going to happen in the future. But I think that the international organizations have to do something with Maduro because they only give press releases and they do nothing. They really has done nothing with Maduro and all the dictatorship in Venezuela, and I hope they do something.
So besides I believe it's Bolsonaro. Besides Bolsonaro, who are the political players in Brazil who are trying to oppose what's going on? Who could be the next person in charge to defeat Lula? Would it be Bolsonaro, or is it somebody else who's coming up?
Well, we have to look what happens with Bolsonaro in the future. They want to get him in jail. They want to not let him compete in the election. So it appears in the scene. All the governors in Brazil, the states in Brazil they are huge. The Sao Paulo governor, it's one of the people that appears that one of the candidates that could run if Bolsonaro gets in jail or he don't let him compete. But Bolsonaro is the face of the opposition in Brazil. He is the leader, and if nothing strange happens, he is going to be running against Lula or against whoever's the candidate in Brazil.
With Moraes being so powerful and unelected, do people think that there is hope for Brazil at this point? Is there still hope for Brazil to get rid of this system and bring back a conservative or freedom-oriented government?
When I travel to Brazil, I talk about that. I ask them how this situation could control, and they say, we don't know. We hope Bolsonaro wins, but if he wins, he can do nothing against the Supreme Court. They are different powers. So, but if they have the enough people in the Congress, they can impeach him. It's the only way that I see that he can stop him. But there is no other way than an impeachment to Alexandre de Moraes. But if this control of all what is happening in Brazil, of all the people that present in the elections in Brazil, still goes on with Alexandre de Moraes, I don't know. They are running against time in Brazil, so I hope these next elections they got a lot of votes, a lot of people in the Congress, so they can stop him before they get late.
And how big of a role does the United States play in what's going on? Could the United States refuse, under a Donald Trump administration, could the United States refuse to do business with Brazil or try to isolate Brazil in response? And would Brazil react if the United States makes a move on them in an economic way?
Well, Alexandre Morales has a lot of money, a lot of properties, a lot of things in the United States. So if Donald Trump wins and he wants to make something about this situation, he can press him with all that things that he have in United States. But Bolsonaro has a great relationship with Donald Trump, so I think that they can talk about that.
And generally speaking, I'm curious what the relations are with Canada and Argentina. Does Milei look at Canada as a friend, Justin Trudeau as a friend, or what does he think about Canada as a trading partner and as a player generally?
The relation of Milei with Canada is a good relation because he wants to have a good relation with all the Occident countries. Whoever is the president, I don't like Justin Trudeau. I think that Milei doesn't like much, but he wants to put over the relation with the countries, whoever is the president. So that's his relationship with the United States. He likes more Trump than Biden, but he has to have a good relation with Biden because he's the president of the United States. He wants to have United States. He wants to have Israel. He wants to have, of course, Canada as allies because they are the Occident countries, right? So if he don't like Justin Trudeau, well, he likes Canada,
right?
and I like Canada, and I hope to go to Canada someday and know there.
Well, if you do find yourself in Canada, Mariano, reach out to me. I'll show you around Toronto. We can have some fun in Toronto, man. Thank you for joining us. And where can Canadians find your work?
Well, thank you. And well, if you come to Argentina, we're gonna eat some asado or some empanadas or a lot of things, a lot of food in Argentina. So you are welcome here too.
And I'll leave a link in the description of this video for Breakpoint on YouTube and on social media. It's in Spanish, but if they want to see your work, they can do so by going to the link in the description. Mariano, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.